As we've been talking about, we've been watching Amazon, the stock sinking 6% over the course of the week, sparked by an Axios report saying the president wants to impose more regulation on the company. And of course, then came President Trump's tweet saying, "I have stated my concerns with Amazon long before the election. Unlike others, they pay little or no taxes to state and local governments, use our postal system as their delivery boy, causing tremendous loss to the U.S. and are putting many thousands of retailers out of business." Trump has been lobbying criticism at Amazon throughout his presidency, saying the company is to blame for job losses and economic stagnation in towns and cities where brick-and-mortar businesses are shuttering. To talk about the relationship between the tech giant and the administration going forward, I want to bring in our Bloomberg Tech executive editor, Tom Giles, in Washington, and Bloomberg's national politics reporter, Sahil Kapur. So, Sahil, first of all, what's been the reaction in Washington to this, and what could the president actually do here?
Well, a pretty muted reaction overall from lawmakers. Keep in mind, Congress is on recess at the moment, so members of Congress don't react unless something is really blows up and captures the attention of people back home, which this doesn't seem to have. One important thing to note is that the White House poured a little bit of cold water on this talk earlier today by telling reporters that no new actions are under consideration with regard to Amazon after the president's tweets on this. It's entirely possible that the president is more venting his frustrations than necessarily signaling a policy shift, because this would mean more regulation, which his party tends to oppose. It would mean more taxation, which his party strongly opposes. Remember, they passed a tax bill just a few months ago that, of course, if the president wanted to, could have gone after Amazon, but didn't. So there's not much of an appetite to do something about that. 5 times last year, it should be noted, the president vented publicly on Twitter about what he called the Amazon Washington Post. That's a key political context to keep in mind there, because the president has gone after Amazon when the Washington Post, which of course has the same owner, Jeff Bezos, has written stories about him that he doesn't like.
Absolutely. Easy to forget that Jeff Bezos also owns the Washington Post, with all of the action coming out of Amazon over the last year. Tom, Amazon does collect taxes on products it sells in 45 states. There are different rules for third-party vendors. It does get a little complicated. Amazon has said it would support legislation, but how strong is President Trump's argument here?
Well, he can keep hammering away at this, right? And he can put pressure on states to think about this, to change their rules. So he does have the power of the bully pulpit to jawbone, to cajole, to encourage states to do this. You could see a scenario where the states come out and say, okay, Amazon, it's incumbent on you to charge tax on behalf of these third-party merchants. Remember, that's about half of Amazon's volume. So it's a lot of the merchandise that they sell over their platform. On the other hand, Amazon's already charging taxes, and that really hasn't put a big dent in their growth trajectory so far.
There's also the question of whether, Sahil, Amazon could strike some sort of sweetheart deal with the Postal Service, which some would argue that Amazon has actually kept the Postal Service afloat, despite what President Trump had to say.
Right. The Postal Service is doing its job there, and there's no sort of there's no sort of exploitation, I think, that has been argued that Amazon is necessarily doing. So I think that would, we would have to wait to see what the White House suggests there, whether there's a proposal that they have, something they want to put on the table to make changes in that. But at this point, nobody really knows. This seems to be coming from, these are direct thoughts from the President of the United States without necessarily a policy backbone to them or allies on board with whatever it is that he ultimately wants to do. So at this point, it's just a conversation. But as we've seen, markets react, and people take notice when the President of the United States says something.
Whether it's Apple, though, or Amazon, or Google, or Microsoft, or Facebook, Tom, which of course Facebook has been in the spotlight the last few days, could more regulation be coming for tech, and could the halo effect around technology be over?
To answer your first question, the answer is absolutely yes. You could see some form of regulation. I don't see it happening as quickly from Congress as, say, for example, an agency like the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. You could see them come out with some kind of rules around social media, around disclosures, around political advertising. The sense that we get from everyone we talk to is that even if they come out with something really meaty, one, it would take a long time to kind of put in place, and two, it would affect margins it would affect profit just around the margins. This is not something that's going to strike at the core of these companies' businesses. Remember, Trump had a chance to kill the Whole Foods deal, right, which would have been a major strategic blow to Amazon's ambitions. It didn't do that. So it could legislate, it could make some changes, but I see it happening around the edges.
Sahil, big tech isn't all one thing. There are a lot of issues at play here, whether it's the size of these companies, whether it's data privacy. But do you think tech and tech regulation could become some sort of flashpoint, some sort of partisan issue going into the midterm elections?
It's absolutely a political conversation right now. I don't know that it breaks down so cleanly along partisan lines, except for the fact that Republicans tend to be the anti-regulation party and Democrats are more favorable to regulations when they see a problem that needs to be fixed. I would be more worried if I'm Facebook right now than if I'm Amazon, because Facebook has been under the gun, facing enormous amounts of criticism for their handling of data privacy and security issues ever since the 2016 election occurred and some of the stuff came out about how their platform was weaponized and manipulated. And a lot of Facebook's reaction has been initially dismissive and ridiculing and mocking. Remember, Mark Zuckerberg said it's crazy to think that his platform could, or the weaponization of his platform, misinformation could have swayed the election. So Facebook has been treating this much more as a PR problem than anything else so far, it seems. And that has landed them in the crosshairs of Congress. Zuckerberg has suggested he would testify. So I think that's where the focus is going to be in Congress. I've heard much less of an appetite for going after Amazon than Facebook.